You're listening to The Good Morning Show with Oliver O.T. Thomas.
We're back. Welcome back to The Good Morning Show. Oliver O.T. Thomas, the early bird, and the entire WBOK listening audience, man. We want to thank Larry Houston, man. First African-American storyboard artist with Marvel Comics. He's here for Comic Con. Hey, look, guys, look, if you're into comics and Marvel and what's going on right now with artists and illustrations, man, go out to the convention center. You'll have people like him and Arvell Jones and Larry Houston is going to be featured. Take the kids out. Go out and see the world of comics. That's this weekend at the convention. And let's not forget, man, today the city's going to bury a great young man, a great attorney, Morris Reed Jr. Today will be laid to rest. And then tomorrow we're going to celebrate the homegoing for Brother Willie Mr. Chill Wilson. I think talking about a great ambassador for our city, one of the best young men I've ever known in my life. So we're going to support him and his family at Franklin Avenue tomorrow, viewing at 8, and the homegoing service will be at 9 o'clock. And that's at the original Franklin Avenue on Franklin Avenue. In the studio with us, man, one of our contributors. We're talking about another iconic figure here in New Orleans, someone who gives a whole lot more back. I always tell folk, and I say this, and people have heard me say it before, the best people God put on this earth, man, are the ones who put themselves second. And by putting themselves second, man, they put our humanity and our quality of life and our challenges first. And Student Minister Willie Muhammad, I think, represents that as well as anyone in this world today. Brother Minister, welcome back.
Man, thank you, man. It's always an honor to be, which I feel is my home as well, WBOK, man. So thank you, thank Lee, and even the owners of the show.
Well, we got another year under our belt,
man. Man, that is amazing how 2019 just flew by, right?
Yes. As a matter of fact, I shared with Jeff yesterday. What Minister Farrakhan posts every year, he posts this prayer about the year before, and I shared it with my wife, and Jeff and I, Thomas and I, were talking about the different prayers or sayings, and the one that he shares each year. I read it New Year's, and it talks about how we honor those who are no longer with us.
Yeah, man.
So one of the best things you can do is not to waddle in that pain or misery, but to pay tribute to their lives moving forward, and also for you to be grateful and thankful that while they're not here, God and the Creator has given you a chance to be here.
Yeah, and when you open up talking about the services that are honoring Morris Reed Jr. and Brother Chill, it just brought back to my mind like what I was thinking when I saw the news of their passing come across social media. It just made me just realize, like, man, we hear people say, you're really not guaranteed to be here tomorrow.
No.
Man. And our prayers go out to their families. And, as a student minister and people who in our mosque knows this, one of the most difficult things of that responsibility, which I have a trouble really doing, is doing funerals. And because it's like, I've personally come to realize that I don't feel there's anything that you can say to help people at that time. To me, I found it more effective just to listen and let them know you will be there for them. But when I do the funeral services, one of the things that I stress to those who are there is that one of the greatest ways that we can honor those who have passed is take the good that we know of them, their passions, or whatever they were involved in, and continue it.
Pay it forward.
Yeah, pay it forward. If they were nice, if they were charitable, then we should be nice and be charitable as a way of continuing on with the good of them. And that's the thing, man. So I'm thankful to Almighty God that I'm here as well, man, this year.
Well, first of all, and likewise, we're thankful you're here. I'm going to do something different. Every time you're on, and it's usually about an issue or something, or there's something going on. I'm going to ask you to do something different as we open up the show this time. Who is Brother Willie Muhammad, right?
I'm a New Orleans native, man, and that is different. That is different. OT. I'm a New Orleans native, man, born in uptown New Orleans to my mother. My father was a high school dropout, and not wanting to see me drop out when my father raised me, he was really stressing education, right? he stressed education so much that in my freshman year at Walter L. Cohen, when the teachers went on strike, it was just a chaotic environment. And I kind of fell into this climate of just trying to follow the group and not be who I am, right? But because he put education in me so much that I knew that just being an average student was not what it was not meant for me. So I began to start kicking into self-drive and knowing that I'm going to maintain this type of average, right? And I tell people some of my funniest experiences when I graduated and went to Xavier University, people would think that I either went to McDonald 35 or St. Aug.
Right.
And I told them I went to Cohen. And still to this day, OT, I have no regrets about going to Cohen, because what Cohen taught me is that don't look down on people because of what section of the city they're from, their physical appearance. I've met some of the at that time, I met some of the most intelligent brothers and sisters from out the Magnolia, from out the St. Thomas. And it made me value people. And I take those lessons that I've learned from attending Cohen, and it has helped me in my ability to relate. It has even helped me in our ministry as a student minister, because I've been there and I know those people who society wants to stereotype and just write off.
Student Minister Willie Muhammad, do you remember that moment? For folk who don't know you, in terms of community advocacy, what you do, and we'll get into these programs at some point, but I think we've never shared this moment with you publicly, and you never talk about yourself publicly, and I think it's important because as an intellectual and academic, you're one of the deep thinkers in our community.
Yeah, let God lead you.
People ask you on some of the most boards and commissions. For folk who don't know, you advise kings and queens when they call. They're usually private moments that folk will never know about. Yeah. What was that moment that changed your life back then that you think contributed to what you are and the role you play now?
Ooh, man, there were several moments. One, I'm trying to not tell. One moment, man, was when my father, who I love, but we all have our challenges. Yeah. When my father walked out on my mother and us as a family. And my mother at that time, I have 3 brothers. She was pregnant with my youngest
You're
brother.
Still affected by that?
Yeah, I still am, but not as much as I used to be. Right. But because I look at it now, and it has helped me to be the person that I am, right? But what affects me about it is that I can still see my mother in pain and crying, right? And so what happened is my uncle, who I love dearly, Lawrence Keys, he came up to me and he said, I was 12 years old, OT. He said, you have to be the man of the family now. So I didn't know what a man was. So I said, if I have to be the man of the family now, I'm going to go and start finding out what a man is. So I started looking at rap music. Bad example. I started looking at television. And then after those 2 exams, then I looked at my relatives and friends that were in my midst. So from that 12-year-old, as a 12-year-old going into 13, all the way up into maybe 17, I'm chasing after a false idea of manhood. And another significant experience that shaped me was the murder of my cousin, Gus Avery Keys, man. And I still remember when I drive down that neighborhood on Harmony and Laurel, I can remember seeing my cousin lying on the ground. And he was such a big influence to me, right? And he had his positive influence, but it was another influence as well. So in that period of time chasing manhood, the movie Indecent Proposal came out. Right. And that's when a millionaire offered the man $1 million
to be with his wife.
And I remember my friends and I sitting on the street corner, and we were sitting on the street corner talking about that whole concept. And we were so ignorant and didn't know the value of women. We were saying, like, man, they can give me a pair of Jordans or whatever.
He can have that.
Yeah.
He can have that.
Because, growing up, manhood and that crazy sense was not showing any weakness for a woman. You don't cry over a female. That's you don't chase a female. Right. You do what you need to do, and that's it. So that was crazy. So it wasn't until one night I'm flipping the television. I participated in that discussion, but there was something that it was a void, something that I knew wasn't right. I'm up. I'm flipping through the television. Minister Farrakhan was speaking at Southern University here in New Orleans. And what stopped me was that he said the movie Indecent Proposal. And he said, he started talking about the movie. And he said, I wish a man would ask me to sleep with my wife for any amount of money. He said he would be picking his teeth up from off the ground. Right. And when I heard that, immediately I said, that's what a man is. And that began to start getting my process. It was a bunch of things. May Allah be pleased with him, the former Morris FX Jr.
Yeah.
His wife used to teach at Cohen.
Yeah.
And she was known as one of the hardest social studies teachers.
Right.
So the first semester I'm playing around like everybody else in class. I get a D. And I'm thinking about what my father instilled in me. I'm like, man, I'm bigger than a D. So everybody else was getting out of a class. I said, I'm not going to get out of a class. So while they used to be playing in a classroom, I started reading the chapters, the sections. And it was American history. So I found out like what this country had done to the Native Americans. And it blew my mind. And then the next question I asked, well, what did they do to black people? And that started me reading. So I started then getting to Malcolm X, learning about him. Then in my neighborhood, like I had my cousins who was in the streets selling dope, but then I also had a cousin who was going to LSU, and he and his friends would come during the weekends or whatever, and they'll be on our porch. So I'm getting the hood, and I'm getting the college. So I'm weighing it both, right? So one of my cousin's friends, my cousin who was in college, his friend would always get the Final Call newspaper. That was another experience I'm gonna share with you. He had a VHS tape of the minister on Donahue, and I watched it. It blew my mind. It blew my mind so much that I took the tape to school the next day and begged my teacher, Miss Saunders. I said, Miss Saunders, can we watch this? She let it. She could have got fired for this. She let him watch. All her classes watched that entire interview at Walter L. Cohen for 2 days straight. So that was it. Stan Schofield came to the school. He's speaking. Right. And Stan had on the back of the chalkboard. Stan
Schofield's watching you right now.
On the back of the chalkboard, there was a bunch of books. Right. And one of them was Message to the Black Man. Right. So I'm sitting in the back and Stan talking to the girls about not being a hoopty. And, you know, he really giving them the game.
Real. Giving them the real.
And I'm sitting in the back like, because I'm thinking I'm this player, this man. I'm like, man, I wish this old man shut up. Man, he messing it up for us. So while I'm looking, I see the book. I said, Message. That's something, he got something to tell me. Black man, I'm a black man. I said, man, I'm going to read that book. I said, well, how am I going to get the book? I said, what I'm going to do, when he finished speaking, he's shaking everybody here, I'm going to go steal it. And as soon as I had that thought, Stan said, don't ask me to see my books. Because he said, people have been stealing my books.
Wow.
And it made me jump, right? And it wasn't until like a freshman in college that I finally got the opportunity to read that book on a freshman in college at Xavier University. So it was a bunch of things, man, that seeing my mother struggle, and that helped to shape me as who I am right now.
We're talking to Student Minister Willie Muhammad, Master number 46. He's a co-founder of Peacekeepers, Beef Hotline, one of the leaders of the Beef Mediation, one of the great mediation programs in this city right now. There's another question that I have to ask you. For folk who know you, that you're known as a deep thinker. In a lot of the circles you're in, whether they're prominent or not, you usually spend several moments in quiet preparation before you, or if you say anything at all. What shaped that level of engagement for you? Because there's always a level of you being present, but there's always this profound level of meditation and absorbing the moment before, if you contribute at all. Where does that come from?
I think that comes from valuing what everybody else has to say. Like, I don't see myself as like I know so much like nobody has anything to say. I learn from everybody. I learn from you. Like, I can sit in, even in this conversation, I'm learning. You know what I'm saying? Like the joy that you have with being a father. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
How you went through your situation.
Right.
And just how you handle and how you maneuver and how you do things. I learned from Lee, everybody. So I just sit back and listen and try to see what's my contribution. I don't think that I know everything. And try to see what's my contribution. And ultimately, I want to help people to be successful in whatever they are. I don't feel like I have to take the lead with everything.
Now I got to ask you this.
Yeah.
And this is personal. And
ask.
There are a lot of people that call you for wise counsel and sage counsel. There's a wide range of kings and queens and difference makers. I call you. There's that moment when I have to know.
Yeah. And you always check on me too.
What prepares you for that? Because that's personal, right?
Yeah,
because in that moment, people want what you have to offer. Yeah. First of all, how do you feel worthy for that?
Wow.
And how important are those moments?
You know, sometimes I don't feel worthy. And because and I said before I get that, one of the things that has prepared me the most is following a man as the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan and the wealth of experience and guidance that he has. Then in addition to that, my own studies of the Bible and the Quran. And then in addition to that, my own life experiences, right? And different things that I hear from different people. Like I've seen and talked to people who have gone through different experiences. So when somebody comes to talk to me about something I can share. A brother called me yesterday. I met this brother in a barbershop, and he spent some time in prison. And when I met him in a barbershop, I just asked him, like I asked a question. Right. And I said, man, how did you survive in that environment? And the brother told me, he said, man, when I went in there, he said, I knew I had to become an animal. Mm-hmm. He said to survive. He said he didn't take nothing. But now since he's been home for a couple of years, he says now his struggle is he thought that he had shaded or got away from that, shared that animalistic thinking to survive. Right. But now he realizes that, I still deal with it. So he asked for help. And I said, whatever I can do to help you to overcome it. But one of the things that I stress to him is don't beat yourself up because of where you are right now. Because the mere fact that you called me and said, listen, man, I don't want to be this way, that's a great sign that you're getting better because you're acknowledging it. So sometimes what makes it difficult for me, and I try to balance it off with people, like I don't want people to praise me because I have my own struggles as well. You see what I'm saying? Like there are times where people call me for marital advice and me and my wife are not seeing eye to eye. Right. There are times where people may call me to feel like they're not feeling like they're making they're accomplishing their goals where I don't feel like I'm doing mine. But nonetheless, so that's why I always try to be balanced. Like when I do marital counseling with people, I say, listen, let's start off from the jump. I don't want you to think that I'm sitting here like I'm some perfect man and husband, right? And sometimes when we do the marital counseling, when I share with them challenges and mistakes that I've made, their eyes buck. But I'm trying to let them know, like, I'm known as student minister Willie and all that, but I don't look at minister from the standpoint of like how people look at minister. I look at, as the minister said, it's a servant. I'm Brother Willie. Listen, I like to laugh. I like to go to movies. I like to play. I like to listen to rap music. But ultimately, I'm a brother. I'm just here in this position. You see what I'm saying?
And now we're going to...
This was truly different.
And now, no, we're going to keep it. We're going to keep it. I think, because I think it's important, right? I think people see you on the surface, right? Yeah. And I don't think enough people know what went into the making.
Yeah, and then the sacrifices, too, because you started off early and you said how people who put themselves second. And to do that, I remember and to do that, there is consequences. So if I'm putting myself second, that means also my family is being put second. And so that's the stuff that people don't realize. Like, the time that I have with you is the less time that I have with my family.
Now,
that produces challenges.
Now, here's a big one. And I've never heard you rail against it, right? I've heard others. They'll make their comments. There are some of the most prominent people in this community that'll call or lean on you for your help, your advice, your wise counsel. But they'll want it to be private because in many cases with the nation, right, there's some pushback. Yeah. There's some negative connotations. Yeah. I've seen you initiate stuff for this community that folk will privately participate or help. But they don't want the public association, but they want what you have to offer. I've never heard you. I've seen people around you make comments, but I've never heard you push back against it or rail against it. Why?
I think because in the end, I'm thinking about a situation where we had a meeting here one night. And you remember that meeting?
Yes.
It's about a very significant issue in the city, and I've never talked about it publicly or anything like that, because in the end, I'm ultimately more concerned about the outcome that's beneficial to our community, right? And that's pretty much it. And I think that is my motive. Like, I'm not into the vanity. I'm not like trying to be like seen or whatever, but that is just the outcome. I'm more concerned about the outcome, man. Let's just solve this situation and just the doing good, because I know that there are things, Brother OT, like, there may be situations where I might not be paying attention. I almost got in a wreck. 18-wheeler might have almost hit me, or I'm not paying attention, or a car almost hit me and it didn't. And I attribute that to, I think I just used up one of the resources that I had stored up from doing some type of good. So that's how I look at it. And when it's time, things will come out. But I'm more concerned about the just the outcome and getting it done.
But Brother Willie, surely some of those little things have to bother you, and it's human nature. Isn't there a moment when you feel like you're being used?
There's some moments where I'll say there's something Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan shared with me. He spoke here the last time he spoke in 2008. The minister, he talked about the Million Man March and how prior to the Million Man March, many of the black leaders that you saw speaking that day, they were not advocating and help pushing it. But when the day came, the minister said, go ahead. And there was something that he told one prominent figure that did not push for it at all. He said, brother, take however much time you want. Right. And I said, brother minister, out of all what you said yesterday, that stood out to me. And he said, I said, man, because most people would not be able to do that. He said with situations like that, he said it gives people the opportunity to see the person's heart compared to my heart. And I think that's the same thing, too, like in regards to stuff that we do to help people and then they don't. It really, for me, it really shows me what their heart is.
And then lastly, before we go to break and before we get into some of the vital programs and stuff that the procedures you've planned in this community, I've heard you say it. And, of course, I've heard the minister say it, that in working across religion and social lines is that the expectation is not to be a Nation of Islam or to be Muslim, but to be the best black man or woman in whatever circle or religion or profession you're in. Why is that important? And in many cases, it's contrary to what people think.
Yeah, it's important because people allow titles to stop us from doing the work. And that's one of the indicators that I know there are people like you're one of the people that I love and respect because you're more about getting the work done. And if I see people, there are people who talk so passionately about wanting to see the community be better, but their passion is not strong enough to overcome their petty differences. And when I see people like that, I feel like you're lying. Because if you really want our community to be better, you wouldn't allow me being a Muslim to stop you from working with me or participating in something. You know what I'm saying? Or letting people know that you came and you asked for assistance.
Right.
You know?
It's just that simple.
Yeah, it's just that simple, so I know.
The quiet man has a lot to say. And today we had a chance to listen. When we come back, we're going to talk to him about peacekeepers and beef mediators and the beef hotline. And everybody's celebrating some of the victories, right? Well, guess what? These seeds were planted a long time ago, and the work never stopped. We're going to talk to Brother Student Minister Willie Muhammad, Master number 46, about that in about 2020 and moving forward. We'll have that conversation and a whole lot more after the break here on the Good Morning Show.
WBOK, New Orleans.
You're listening to the Good Morning Show with Oliver O.T. Thomas.
We're back. Welcome back to the Good Morning Show. Oliver O.T. Thomas, the early bird, and the entire WBOK listening on. Yeah, we flipped the script, man. We went in depth, right, with one of the most profound and active leaders and advocates in our community today, Student Minister Willie Muhammad, Master number 46, co-founder of Peacekeepers Beef Hotline. Student Minister, first of all, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for that conversation in the first half of the show. I think it was important.
Yeah.
I think too often people know the image, they know the title, but they don't know the man or the woman. And I really appreciate you giving us a chance to get into the making of Willie Muhammad and who he is.
It's nothing. You know, we see people and we just think like they're just getting revelations from God. No, we got to go through stuff. Everybody go through stuff, man. Like that's
Jesus on the main line.
Like, yo, you're gonna go through something, but the beauty of going through something is that, you know, I'll use this example with look at what Jesus told Peter. Imagine how Peter felt. He the number one disciple of Jesus, and when it come to the most critical point in Jesus' life, he turned. Like, imagine how he woke up in the morning. He couldn't look himself in the mirror, but then Jesus told him before his fall that I prayed for you. And then he said, but after you have fallen, when you get back up, he said, go and rise and strengthen your brethren. But it was through his fall that he got what he needed to be able to strengthen people after who were going to fall when Jesus was no longer here.
You consistently remind men and women that the best comes after the fall.
Yeah.
I've not seen you talk to a group or talk to someone or talk to counsel that deepest incident when you think maybe life is over and the world is ending. You constantly remind people, no, that is your moment to be reborn. Why?
Because we to me, I think we're too hard on ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
Like what I love about the verses in the Holy Quran, like Allah says this, He says that in the end, all He asks is that our good deeds outweigh our bad deeds, right? Because sometimes we try to live our life being perfect. Mm-hmm. How can you live your life being perfect in this world, the condition that is in? So we can't, like I talked about it last Sunday, don't judge your life based upon a one season of it. Because you just may be in, this is your growth period, right? And that's what I'm learning. Like, man, listen, I'm not saying don't accept responsibility for what you have done. Accept it, but don't be hard on yourself, because as long as you are alive, you get the opportunity to write a new chapter.
Brother, Student Minister Willie Muhammad, so let's talk about, right now the city is experiencing some form of maybe a renaissance or success when you talk about overall violence. Mm-hmm. The role peacekeepers, the beef hotline, beef mediators have played. Mm-hmm. They've been consistent with no funding, basically just with men and women who've been committed to that success.
Putting our life on the line.
Talk about those programs. Why were they important to the city you live in, and the role that they play today?
And man, to tell you, look how significant WBOK is. Do you know it was after an interview that I did in 2011 that after I got off the show with Gerard, a brother called me and he gave me the idea for the conflict resolution. And from there, that's why we started work. That's how, after the interview, I'll never forget that. And we just went to work. We didn't have training and all of that. We just went to work. You participated. And I'll never forget, man, when I go throughout the cities, we've been to like over 25 cities doing the trainings. Right. And sometimes I share stories, but one of the ones I shared when we were at this mediation, and remember we asked the three brothers, it was three brothers beefing with this other brother. And two of them was like, I'm willing to let it go. I'm willing to let it go. But the other one had this screw face. And I remember, I never forget, shout out to Brother Calvin and you, the stories that you all shared. And you talked about how the conversation you had with your brother. And you said, if you love our family so much, why you, and that, to see that brother who had a stone face, it started moving them, right? Yeah. But look at that. You see how that came out of a real experience. So, you know, like you said, we planted the seeds. And one of the things that I dislike about how the city administrations do, all of them, that when they have these successes, that they spin it as if it was just them. Right. When there are many people, and I'm not just saying all us. Right. There are many people that are out there doing. There are people that you don't even know, grandma, uncle, or the dude who respected in the neighborhood. So we gotta, if we want the community to be a part of this engagement, we gotta begin to start saying like, no, it's a collective effort. Right. Don't call for the community to be involved in solving the problems, and then when it gets some reduction of it, you're gonna take all the credit. And that's to me, that's crazy. It sends a contrary message, right? And so it's different things. And I don't even think people realize, and I mentioned this to some politicians. We live in at a time now where people's religious practice is very diverse.
Absolutely.
But people will get up and say, I want to thank the churches. And there's no shot on it. But what about the mosques? What about the synagogues? What about the temples? Everybody is participating in this. But we don't realize when we do stuff like that, it helps to continue the divide.
Absolutely.
So, you know, with the work of the peacekeepers, like we don't, contrary to some of these woke people want to believe, like you people, Willie Muhammad and people, they're a 501c3, they getting grant money. And if we was grant money, so what? Which we're not. But if we were getting it, so what? We'll be using it for what it is. Absolutely. But we're not getting it. It's coming out of the money. This is coming out of the pockets of those who are participating in other people. And I still don't believe we have seen the full effect of the conflict resolution hotline right now. But the seeds are there, and I realize we're battling a culture. It is a culture of violence. So I'm happy to hear that there's a reduction in the violence in the city of New Orleans over the last 50 years. But, you know, we can't take our foot off the pedal because the next day there were 2 murders. Right?
So talk about, especially in these many of these mediations, and you know, a lot of them are strictly they're confidential. Mm-hmm. You know, we don't share who the players are. Mm-hmm. But I'll never forget talking to you in observing, in that most of them are about stuff that could be avoided, or something so trivial, man, that folk wouldn't believe. And you're talking about death and murder and revenge, about stuff that at the end of the day, especially when the mediation's over, people can't believe why they ever had a beef with each other.
Yeah, we've sat at tables, and you've been there to witness that when we get to them talking, we get them to the table if we're able to do so, and we say, so what are y'all beefing about? And they stop and they say, man, I don't even know. But these are we see the outcome on the news. Somebody was shot 30 times, the shell casings. But in the very, very early stages of this stuff, man, it's over. Misunderstanding, misperception, false idea of what a man is, or just feeling like I gotta do this or the hood is not gonna think that I'm real, right? And there's a lack of communication, and it's just crazy. Remember the one that we did not too far from here in the school that you called, where this young brother got into, he was in his class, he went to go use the restroom. When he returned, the brother took his chair, and he respectfully said, hey, man, that's my chair. And then words which the other guy who took his chair was disrespectful. Words were exchanged. He came to school the next day with a knife. Then he's in his neighborhood. He gets shot in the arm. Yeah. He think that the dude who took his chair shot him in the arm. We brought him together. The dude said, man, I could have not shot you in the arm. He said, man, I don't even know where you live.
Right.
And that changed it. So it's the work. And these are the stories like that people don't know about that is being done. And our objective is to be proactive. So
I want to talk to you about that, though, because you mentioned about the resources. It's important. I'll never forget when the St. Roch neighborhood was being overwhelmed several years ago. And first of all, Police Chief Harrison actually would come out,
he would come out
and walk with us. But you had men and women, first of all, from all faiths.
Yeah.
A lot of those Christians who don't want to claim working with Muslims, and many publicly, many of them they'll work with you privately. But you constantly remind people that it's not a Muslim effort.
It's not.
It's a community. It's a community effort. But what I want you to focus on is that, and you talk about resources. When peacekeepers and beef mediators have been called to impact a certain incident or a certain community, it works. But then it's not sustainable. Talk about if the resources would accompany the effort in New Orleans. How much of a difference would it make?
It would make a big difference. You know what I'm saying? And not only the financial resources, but even the people who have the skill set to
human
help
capital.
us. Yeah, the human capital to help us develop and put structures in place. Because we started this off. Our sole motive to start this off was to stop people from getting killed. We didn't think about money. We didn't think about awards. So it would help. Like a vision that I have, OT, is that the beef hotline it becomes so common as much as like the same way you drive down the street and you see We That Chicken billboard. I want people to drive down through the city and they see a beef hotline billboard. Or they hear it on the radio where it's just constant hearing it, because that helps us. As the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad used this example. He said, if you take a stone and you put it under a faucet and let one drop of water just consistently drop on it, it'll wear that stone down. And that's how I see the work that we're doing with conflict resolution, to wear down this culture of violence. Like, look at what's going on. It's like what we see in the community is a microcosm of the macrocosm. Like right now, Trump just ordered it was an assassination of a top commander in Iran. And the people in Iran saying, yo, we ain't gonna let this roll without retaliate. That's the same thing that takes place in the streets. It's the same thing that takes place in the streets. So it's a culture of violence. You know what I'm saying? It's a culture of violence.
Not in the black community, but in our nation.
In our nation, in America. It's like now with the election of President Barack Obama, they said for the first time in American history, you have more guns than American citizens. It's a culture of violence, and they like to try to make it like it's just us. It's just us. But now with social media, you see them fighting each other. You see them doing all type of stuff. You see them running into these schools and synagogues and killing people for unjust reasons. And that stuff has to stop. You see them where it's clearly that their son has some type of mental health issues, but they were able to have access to AR-15s.
Right.
And it's like, yo, this is a problem. But there's not a will for those people in power to do something to actually address it,
We're having our conversation with student minister from Mosque number 46 and co-founder of the New Orleans Peacekeepers and Beef Hotline, Brother Willie Muhammad. Brother Willie, you have a level of notoriety politically and socially in this community, especially being the head of our Mosque 46. People know you for your work with Peacekeepers and Hotline, those who work in those conflict mediation circles. But there's another area that whenever I hear you talk, when you give meetings, and that is economic development, black
my
entrepreneurs. For folk who don't know, you are one of the biggest advocates of African American businesses in supporting our own and supporting black business that we have in this country. Yeah. Folk don't know you for that role, but you never not take a moment to talk about our role economically as well as socially.
I think about salute to Brother Assad and others. You too participated, Brother Walters, who's in Birmingham.
Oh,
I remember we did the Black Business Bus Tour.
Where
we brought a group of people who went to each of these on a Saturday.
The black foodies.
And he did with black foods because when we have to become economically strong, and we have the resources. We just don't have the actual unity, because if we were able to use the funding and get the funding, support one another, chances are these black businesses are going to go up and hire other people that look like them, and that's how we can begin to do it. That could be is not in that. Activity is not anti anybody else. It's a part of the overall solution. You know what I'm saying? Because like the Mosaic Elijah Muhammad talked about how it's more of us than jobs that's available. So even if they gave everybody jobs, there's still people who won't have jobs.
I want to stay in this area because there's so much that people, they know the figure, they know the celebrity, but they don't know the man. And that's why this interview is important for me. So please.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Within the mosque, what folk don't know, entrepreneurship is encouraged. We see churches now that are starting to do the same thing. Within the mosque has always been one of the foundations, not just to work for someone else, but to encourage people to work for themselves, but also in terms of creation of small business. Talk about that movement right now, that whereas the nation and the mosque may not get credit for that, but we're seeing that play out a lot more in other churches and other social institutions.
And it started from the Mosaic Elijah Muhammad teaching us to be self-sufficient and he said, do for self or suffer the consequences. And it has been further elaborated and explained by the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, which is telling us, like, listen, man, why are you going to school? But don't just go to school and get a degree with the intention of, I'm going to go work for somebody else. Go and create your own, right? And I'm going to tell you, some of the most business savvy brothers and sisters that I've met since being in the nation are those brothers who are out there in the streets hustling. They have it, and now they've transformed where they're doing great things with real estate. They're doing things with all type of businesses that they actually have. So that's the thing, and now you're starting to see entrepreneurship is growing within the black community. Black women are leading entrepreneurs,
in small business creation.
And so the thing is, like, we're happy to see the churches advocated. We're happy to see the churches push it because we want to create that culture. Like, there's a pastor I heard on the commercial we came in. He has a show. I think I met him once or twice. He talks about conflict resolution.
That's Everett.
We want everybody to keep because we have to create a culture. We're not trying to be where it's just a Muslim thing. No, this is a New Orleans thing because it affects all of us, So in regards to with that, we have to do it. And then the other thing that we advocate as well, so I'm a big advocate of getting people to stop being cheerleaders, because people will be quick to want to put the work on just a small group of people. No, it's for all of us.
I'm walking down that road, and then I'm walking down that road.
And I know it's like, OT, you got, especially being here on the radio, OT, somebody need to do this. Or like, yo, what you gonna need to do? Brother OT has sacrificed for the city, man. Sacrifice. When he said, like, in regards to me being second, you are that type of person. You know what I'm saying? Like the story you shared off air, you're that type of person, man, that has sacrificed for the city and continue to do so. And that's why there's no place in this city, no neighborhood in this city you can't go that people don't respect you and love you.
I'm gonna ask you this question because you said it. I actually use this whenever I talk to groups about community engagement, about with our homeboy Felton Earls, one of the great Harvard heads at Harvard Medical School, who calls collective efficacy, and that's just people being involved. I'll never forget, and you said this a couple times, that you appreciate the honor, you appreciate the award, but you would appreciate it even more if you saw more people lining up to do the work. You do it in a humble way, but you also do it in a way and challenging people, hey guys, look, I'm just one man, and if there were more of us, more could get done. Why do you do that, and what do you mean by that?
Because we have a tendency to want to be cultish. We have a tendency to just looking for a superhero and not realizing that all of us on this planet Earth have a responsibility to make this world better. And I'm not saying that everybody's contribution has to look the same. I'm saying just get involved, right? I imagine there's a big fight. Somebody might be kicking, somebody might be punching, somebody might be just holding a person's hand down, but get involved. And I'll never forget, we were doing this cleanup effort behind our mosque in the East, right? And I would tell Brother Jason, salute to Brother Jason, I say, Brother Jason, we got to be careful. I don't want these people to start thinking that we're the new trash people. And so when we were going through there, a brother who lived in the neighborhood came out and said, yeah, man, thank you all for what y'all doing. He pointed at a light fixture. He said, man, y'all need to call somebody to get the light fixed. I said, y'all need to call somebody. I said, you need to call somebody that's in front of your door. Right. I said, we don't live here. But see, that's the thing. And I think that is from a variety of reasons, because I shared this with somebody yesterday, like places of worship are where we're supposed to go and learn about the divine within ourselves and how to access that divine and how to use that divine to say, being it is, to change our own personal environments, right? But now what has happened, we go to those places of environment and the God in us gets buried. Mm-hmm. Like I did a lecture talking about, I looked at one of the most significant sayings of Jesus. I must have read like 5 articles. They'd list like 10 verses from what Jesus said, 30, 50. Right. And out of all the articles that I read, none of them mentioned this verse that Jesus said. He said, don't marvel at my works, for greater works shall ye do. Isn't that should be the number, in my opinion, that should be the number one thing, because if people believe he raised people from the dead, helped the blind see, helped the deaf hear, if he's saying you can do greater works than them, then we should be on heaven on earth right now. But the problem is that people don't look for God within themselves.
Student Minister Willie Muhammad, we're in the midst of some renaissance. We're in the midst of some gains, but we're still in the midst of some challenges here. This is your city, New Orleans.
Born and raised, man.
2020. What is Brother Student Minister Willie Muhammad? What do you pray for? What do you expect? What do you expect from yourself in 2020? What do you expect from us?
Well, I posted something on a social media thing. I had a picture of Muhammad Ali standing over Sonny Liston and Mike Tyson standing over the guy he beat when he became champion. Right. And I said, for me personally, I want to face whatever difficulties and fears like that. Right? Because I have difficulties and fears. Sometimes I overcome my fears. Sometimes I succumb to them. So personally, I want to face whatever fears are difficult. I don't want to run from any difficulty. I want to challenge it, because I know if I challenge it, I'm going to be better on the other side. I personally there are goals that I want to accomplish. There are things that I want to do. So that's what me personally, and stuff, even like places I want to travel for the city. I want to see, like we just talked about, I want to see people begin to start understanding that the responsibility of getting the city together on whatever issue that affects it is not just on a few group of people. Everybody has to be involved. So I want to do my best to begin to start driving that message. I was at Kwanzaa at Studio B, and that's what I closed out with, saying, like, listen, you have a responsibility. Every one of us have a responsibility to do something to make this world better. And I want to be rich too. I want to increase my finances. Right. Real talk. They got stuff that I want to have.
You have a family too.
Yeah, man. So that is real. So, but the biggest thing, I just say that the community to understand that you have a role. You can't put it all on the police department. You can't put it all on the mayor. You can't put it all on your pastor. You can't put it all on the radio host. You have a role to play. Find some issue. They got something. If it's dealing with HIV, there's some issue. Get involved and stop all that complaining, man, and criticizing those who are doing something.
You've been the quiet man in the room. You've lectured. You've initiated programs. We're in 2020 right now. I know one of your prayers that I know that that the good things be sustainable, and many of the ills that plague our community go away. What is that one issue going into 2020 that, and maybe it's not just one, but what is that issue that going into 2020 that student minister that you pray for that we can eradicate or move forward from?
You know, one of the things I pray for is that, especially within our community, that we learn how to resolve conflicts without violence. And I think in order for that to happen, the church needs to speak more about conflict resolution. The barbershops, the schools, it needs to start being a part of the schools at a very young stage as well. So that's one of the things.
Well, you want to get to a caller. Line number 1, Eric, you're on with Student Minister Willie Muhammad.
Hi, guys.
Hey, brother Eric.
How y'all doing today?
Doing fine.
Right. Yeah, I just wanted to ask Brother Student Minister Willie Muhammad, the community, the neighborhood right around you, how have they responded to the mosque and the services that you all provide? I know you just gave one example, but as a whole, have they appreciated what you all have provided?
They're definitely. When we go into that neighborhood, the times that we have, you know, we'll always receive with love. The young children run up to us. You know, there was a brother in our community who wanted to be anonymous. He donated some money. He said, man, I want you to go through the neighborhood, find mothers who are suffering and give them $100. And we were doing that. So we found people and we're giving them money, no strings attached. Just whatever you do with it, we see that you are struggling. We want to, this is on the behalf of mosque number 46. And, you know, our motto as a mosque is a mosque of service. So we want to be known for doing more than we're known for talking. And, of course, if we have more resources, we could do a lot much more. But whatever we have that we do it, if it's just giving a kind word. So they respond well, man. A desire that we have in that area, if you pass there, we have been able to transform that block.
No. There's some investment. Yeah. There's some transformation going on along that Dalman Strip right now.
Somebody just bought a building to the left of our mosque that we wanted to buy, but we weren't able to secure the financing. But a goal that I have in that area behind us, you see a lot of these dilapidated condos. We want to buy them and transform them.
Buy back the block, man. That old Liberty Bank movement right now.
So, and that's what, you know, so we need to look to see how we can secure some funding from Liberty. If they grant us some funding as a mosque, so we can begin to use the funds to renovate the area and for good, not for me to go buy no car, nothing like that, to really transform the neighborhood.
Right. Well, appreciate it.
Thank you, Brother Eric. Of course, we've gone overtime.
It was good.
Here with this segment. Hey, man, you know, thank you. I don't think too many people have gotten to know what went into the making of the man, Willie Muhammad, the sacrifices, the joys, the pain, the human.
Yeah, I'm very human. I tell you, like we said off the air, don't put me on a pedestal, because everything I've seen that's put on the pedestal is fragile and it can break.
The human, anything you want to add? How can people follow you? How can they keep up with you? When are your services at the mosque?
We service every Sunday at 10 a.m. At Muhammad Mosque number 46, and at the end of the month, we're going to do a fundraiser. We're bringing a brother down who's a violinist, and I like this brother because his image and his outer look is contrary to what people think as a member of the Nation of Islam. So we'll have information about that. Maybe we'll come on.
Absolutely,
and promote it.
Hope you will.
But you know, thank you all. Thank WBOK for his being a consistent voice. Thank you for what you're doing and your sacrifice, and thank Lee as well.
The Hardy man. My church.
The bird, what happened to the bird?
The early bird. The early bird has been intent and listening, because he's usually.
It is.
You heard him, man. He said, "Assalamu alaikum," right? The early bird, man. You promised to come back.
Oh, all the time, anytime, y'all. You know, I'm coming.
Hey, our interview, man, with Student Minister Willie Muhammad, Muhammad's Mosque number 46. When we come back, we're going to talk to Jeff Asher about the real numbers, right? How do we make those numbers sustainable? What does it mean? How does he break down those numbers? Where do they come from? What are the neighborhoods? What are the categories? Crime in New Orleans. Everybody's celebrating. But why are they? We'll talk to Jeff Asher after the break.